Hi everyone and welcome to another TABI Live with me, Janine Worthington. I'm the chair of TABI and this evening I've got the great pleasure of talking with Michael Moorcroft from the Mage's Well. And if anybody's familiar with the Mage's Well podcast, he talks about the different seasons. He talks about being a witch. He talks about witchcraft. Is very, very fascinating. So tonight, as we are going into the energy of Samhain, and we're going into the dark season, we will be talking about the death card and the energy of Scorpio, as well as many other things as well. And it's lovely to see you all. So I can see Claire. Hi Claire. Kingflower, hello. And good evening to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're just waiting for Michael to join, and then I'm just going to add him into the live. We've just come back from Tenerife, so going from 28 degrees to 8 degrees here in Manchester and rain. So we've had a really, really hot holiday. It was wonderful actually. I don't know if any of you have been to Tenerife before, but it's such a lovely place. It's really, really beautiful. Hi Claire. Yeah, so as soon as Michael comes in, I can add him into the live. Hola, hola, saludos desde Chile. Hello Gwen. Hi Victoria, how are you? Please get your tarot cards ready because we're going to look at all of the different aspects of the death card as well. So it'll be helpful and handy to have your own death card there, and we can have a look at the symbolism as well and have a bit of a chat about it. So I'm just going to let Michael come in. This should work.
You hear me?
There we go. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's great. How are you?
Yeah, good. It's a little bit cold. It's quite nippy at the minute here, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I was just saying that I've come from Tenerife, from very warm,
Yeah,
28 degrees, 29 degrees actually one day, to freezing cold
it's quite the
and
shock to the
rain.
system.
But it's nice, isn't it? Because I was just saying, as we're coming into the dark side of the dark side of the year, but it is for us up here in the northern hemisphere,
Mm,
and it
mm.
feels, for me anyway, really comforting. The energy of it, that lovely transformational energy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the crisp blue skies and like when it's still sunny, like I don't know if you were out like on Sunday, but that really crisp autumnal day, like that's lovely. I think that's like one of my favorite parts of the year, like everything's brown and golden and yeah, that is quite nice that. But yeah, I think comforting if like you're in the house and it's warm and like you're not traipsing around in the rain maybe. I don't know, I find the rain really grim and yeah, I don't know, I struggle with the rain.
I quite like it. I like the sound of it, and I find the whole energy of this bit of the year very powerful. Is very, very powerful,
Mm,
and it's often said that the veil is very thin between the
mm,
different dimensions at this time of the year as we're going into Samhain, which makes it even more powerful, and a very spiritual time to connect with the ancestors as well, because we've got the Day of the Dead, haven't we? Dia de los Muertos.
yeah,
Um,
and then like
that's today.
all,
No?
say again for me.
1st of November. 1st of November.
Yeah, and I think that sort of coincides with All Saints' Day and then All
Yeah.
Souls' Day on the second. So there's a lot of like death celebrations around this time of year, and I think it's quite poetic because it's so in tune with the land and the time. Um, Darkness is taking over the light, and death is creeping over the land, and like everything's like rotting and decaying, getting ready for a rebirth in the spring. It's all quite poetic and symbolic and quite beautiful when you think of it. So yeah, it's a very powerful time, I think. Um, yeah, and like with the ancient Gaelic people, it wasn't so much a link with the dead so much and like the ancestors. That came a little bit later. With them, it was all about like the supernatural powers, like the ghosts, not the ghosts rather, but like witches, like evil entities, and it was more supernatural. This link that we have today with like Halloween and Samhain and death, this only really starts to come in around like 600 AD, CE, when a emperor starts to move the All Saints' Day into Halloween, or Samhain rather, and from there on out, that's when the death association starts to creep in, and yeah, like originally it was never about the dead; it was more like these supernatural, like goblins and witches, and
Yeah,
so yeah, it's quite interesting how it's just morphed over time and it's become,
absolutely.
yeah, amalgamated with different concepts. It's really interesting.
And I watched your video where you were talking about that. It was very interesting, that it's a fairly new concept, although like a
Mm,
few hundred years, but it's huge in America, isn't it?
mm,
Halloween
mm,
is a
mm.
massive thing in America and bigger than it is here in the
Well,
UK.
yeah, I think it's interesting though because I think it's starting to change here because I've noticed that around the beginning of October, like decorations were going up, and I was like, oh, it's becoming like a month-long thing now.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I also find it quite funny because I think like um, the West has got such a sanitized view of death, um, and yeah, I just find it funny how we can sort of celebrate it in like a superficial way, but the actuality of it, we're like, oh no, keep it away. Like we can't have this in. It's very yeah, sanitized. It's the best word I can think of. Yeah, it's quite ironic, I think, in a way. Yeah.
That's what I love about the death card as well. So I've got a couple of different ones that I pulled a few out, but with the Rider Waite one,
Mm,
you've got that you've got the concept of regeneration in there down to a
mm,
T, haven't you?
mm,
And it's beautiful, and you can actually see in the background the little boat on the water. So the
mm,
water being the emotions or the soul's journey, the spiritual aspect,
mm,
and the boat crossing that, traversing it, making it cyclical. I do believe, not everybody does, that we go on to different lifetimes and we continue to move on. Death is not a final stop. And I think it's beautiful in this card.
yeah, and like it's quite interesting how you've got the different figures within that. You've got someone turning away from death, which is like the taboo of death. You've got like the king who's like slain on the floor. If you've got the religious guy like trying to like pause him, and it's just like death, yeah, you're not going to win against death. It's not going to be conquered. So yeah, and like
Yeah.
you've also got like, the black and white symbolism, which is like the duality and starkness of death as well. It's quite, yeah, there's a lot happening in it. There's a lot happening in it. Um,
And you've got the two pillars of the moon there and the
mm,
sun, which also shows that it's a journey. That's the fool's journey. It continues on through the
mm,
major cards.
yeah,
So you can see those other major cards within this one. And yeah, the bishop or the hierophant, religion, pleading with the death card rider, and then you've got the maiden turning away, vanity, refusing to
yeah,
look,
yeah,
look at death,
yeah.
and then the innocence of the child, the only
Being
one,
curious, yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
curious,
yeah,
who's actually looking to that death card
yeah,
rider. Yeah, like you said, with curious eyes. And then you've got
yeah.
the emperor, the king, trampled on. That's the ego. The
Mm.
ego's just been knocked for six, completely rode over by that death card rider, because the ego's the last, well, the last thing to go
Well,
sometimes,
yeah,
isn't it?
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And I think
Mm.
the fact that it follows on from the Hanged Man, which is typically about being in limbo,
Yeah.
not feeling, you're really far removed from the situation. Death is the card that gets rid of that stagnation. I don't know how you feel about it, but I see a lot of people online and they're saying like, death's all about rebirth, and I'm like, for me, I think death is an invitation for rebirth. Now, whether you take that invitation or not is down to you, but I think if it's not taken, whatever is meant to die just stagnates, and then you're kind of pushed into the tower mode where everything like absolutely has to go. And I think the refusal of the call to take on the mantle of death, I think it's more traumatic with the tower if the tower causes deeper wounds than if you'd have just accepted what needed to die and what needed to pass on. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of there's a lot of power in the death card, and yeah, it's not to be ignored when you see it in a reading. I think it's something like there's something that's got to be released in order for something new to come forward.
And for those who have just met Michael for the first time, eh,
Mm.
he is the creator of the Mage as Well podcast, also has his Instagram page, Facebook page, but talks about the seasons, some really interesting videos that you put together, which explains the history of it and the concept of it. And we were just having a chat before we came on, weren't we, that once you start to work with the seasons, whether you do practice Wicca or witchcraft, whatever your practice is, but spiritual practice, you start to move with that energy of the season.
Mm.
It becomes very, very powerful, doesn't it?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
I think as well, like it's really with the modern world, like it's so easy to ignore what's happening around you. Like we don't eat seasonally, like we're not really, we're very in a bubble against the environments and like the weather and stuff. Like it's very easy to just push it to one side and just sort of plow through. But I think there's so much power in just recognizing that another cycle's passing and there's different energy around the different seasons. And for example, there's more energy typically around summer, and winter we tend to go inwards and it's a time for reflection. And it's very easy to ignore that, and it kind of bugs me a bit. Like around, like obviously we're gearing up for Christmas and like the new year, and it's all like go 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 and like parties and like socializing. But like traditionally, this was never a time for that. It was like hibernation mode for us, and it's just like I don't know. Like I think we've kind of got a bit mixed up with things, and I think
I
yeah,
agree. Yeah.
it's okay to take it easy during winter. We don't have to be like these big social butterflies because it's just not energetically available for us. So yeah, there's power in definitely following the seasons and honoring them. Yeah.
It's interesting that you say that as well, because I've never really liked I've always been the one sat in the corner of the New Year's Eve celebration. They're just really
Yeah.
not getting into it and thinking, this is not for me. Why
No,
am I not feeling
it
it?
should be
Maybe I should be
spring.
feeling something that
Yeah.
I'm not feeling. But yeah, I've always felt that about New Year's Eve. It's felt a bit superficial. And then when you think about Christmas as well, how that's all mixed up, you know.
Yeah, like the origins of Christmas are very
Yeah.
interesting. Like, yeah, a lot of like pagan elements drawn from it, and yeah, it's very interesting, the origins of Christmas.
We've got bonfire night on the 5th of November here in the
Mm,
UK, and that traditionally came from Guy Fawkes, Guido
yeah.
Fawkes, trying to overthrow Parliament with the gunpowder plot. And then that turned into, because they were executed, and then there was a big push from the powers that be at the time to say that you must have this fire every year to represent the guy going on top
Mm,
of the fire and being burnt, as in like we will not be
yeah.
hated. And it's
Ergo,
carried on to
subscribe to our
present time.
power.
Yeah, and we don't have the guy on the fire anymore, but we have got this symbolism in the fire. And that goes back to that, it's
Mm,
not actually anything, and people don't really know about what
yeah.
happened, and why we're celebrating that. And so it's very interesting, isn't it? Because you've got pagan celebrations, you've got Christian
And
celebrations.
it's just all,
Yeah.
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 Well,
Mm.
the bonfire night was that was originally a Samhain thing.
Mm.
The fires were lit to ward off like the
Mm-hmm.
supernatural dangerous energies, and then obviously the Guy Fawkes plot happened, and just the emphasis on the fire got moved to more towards like the 5th of November, and it's just all, yeah, it's spread out a little bit. So,
And it was quite political then, wasn't it? I mean, nobody knows that that
massively.
was actually quite a political statement. You know,
Mm,
we're showing the burning of this person that tried to
y-
overthrow the
yeah,
government of the day,
yeah,
and it's
yeah.
like,
It's got a
oh,
lot of.
mm,
I think that's a spell in of itself, to be honest. Like obey power. Um, yeah, there's a lot we could talk about that, but yeah, like I think a lot of these ceremonies that are held by the government, there's a lot of like interesting undertones magically speaking, and there's a lot of
mm,
symbolism, and the symbols obviously go back into history, and it's all very evocative of certain emotions within people. Yeah, it's very interesting. Like the display of power,
mm-hmm.
very, very interesting, and yeah, very magical at times.
And stop me if I'm wrong, but I think he was actually trying to reinstate Catholicism in this.
Like that's no, my English history is not good. I could speak to you about ancient Egyptians, but English
Oh,
history, I'm like,
oh,
not
well,
my
I think that was
speciality.
Guy Fawkes. So everybody who's on the chat, please feel free to join in. But yeah, with the history of that, I think it was intended to be a reinstatement of Catholicism,
Because
and it
it was
didn't
like a
work. Yeah,
pendulum, wasn't it?
yeah,
Catholicism and Protestantism. It's quite,
mm.
yeah, turbulent.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely in this country, it's been quite an interesting
yeah,
history. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
What do you think of this one then, Michael? So this
Oh,
is,
I've seen that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've got the Phoenix there, which is like the highest form of Scorpio, isn't it? Because like a lot of the cards will portray like the evolution of Scorpio. Like
yeah,
I've got the Thoth deck, and I don't know, like there's lots of mixed reviews about the Thoth deck, but it quite resonates for me because it's quite like tough medicine. You know, it doesn't beat around the bush. Have you encountered the Thoth deck much?
yeah, it was the first deck that I found
Yeah.
when I was a kid under the floorboards. I've got quite a few cards missing out of it now, so I bought a replica one, and that one's got a few cards missing from it.
Oh, how
But
interesting.
I have got the death card in that pack, and it's stunning, isn't it? And I don't know if you've got it with you there, but it always looks to me like the netting, not the netting, but like the mast from a ship.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
always see that, you know, like he's stretching out the mast from the ship, and that makes me think of that spiritual journey,
Yeah.
the fact that, you know, that we carry on, and like we have these death moments in our lives, don't we? We have
Oh
chapters.
yeah,
I mean, I'm
massively.
going through one
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Me
myself,
too.
actually,
I feel
literally.
like I'm going through one every day of the week. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, when is there going to be rest? Like,
Yeah, yeah. The grief
yeah.
process, and
Mm,
not just about losing people. You know, they could be different chapters of your life that are drawing to a close, that
yeah.
have like a really deep pull on the emotions, you know, that
Mm,
can be hard to leave behind, you know, and the different aspects of ourselves, because we're like onions, aren't we? We're
yeah.
constantly revealing new layers of ourselves as we grow and as we develop, and as we move through this spiritual pathway. I mean, it's very powerful. And Scorpio, you mentioned Scorpio as well. This is the
Mm.
Russell Grant version of Scorpio.
Okay.
We got quite quite a mysterious figure, but it's almost like a Harley Quinn as well.
Yeah, I was getting like Joker vibes, like the not
Yeah.
Joker. What was the like crown? The fools, like for the royal courts? Like,
Yes,
jesters.
Jester.
Yeah, it's definitely giving some of that energy. And I think, yeah, the scepter is quite a powerful thing. And you've also got the eagle within there. Like, there's the evolution of Scorpio, isn't there? Where it's like the first stage is the scorpion, which is like the need for protection and the need to evade things that it feels threatened by. You've got the next level, which is the snake, which is the idea of shedding that which no longer serves. And then you've got the phoenix or the eagle, which is like the highest evolution, and it's this idea of like rebirth and transcendence.
Yeah.
And you see, interestingly, like a lot of birds throughout many different tarot decks, like that one you've just shown there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like flying things, whether it be moths or types of birds or vultures or whatever. And that's about like the releasing of the ego, but also this idea that with death, it is this idea of being set free, and it is this idea of like being able to see the horizon more and broadening your horizons,
Yeah.
which a death does allow you to do. And like you said, we constantly go through so many metaphysical and metaphorical deaths within our lives that it's it's the only thing you can rely on, the fact that you will die and that there will always be change, that it's two guarantees in life. And you they're as painful as they're as painful as how much you hold on to them, and in the releasing of them you get better at it. And yeah, I don't know, like I've just turned 30, and I've gone through my, I don't know how well versed you are in astrology, but I've just gone through like a Saturn return, and it was just so brutal to the point where I was like, nothing from my old life remains, and it's just quite like, go with the flow, go with the flow, go with the flow.
The Saturn returns are very difficult, aren't they? Yeah.
Massively,
Yeah, I had a
massively.
bad one, and I didn't work with it very
Mm,
well, to be fair.
mm,
I
mm.
clung on to a lot of things, and like it's the Tower card energy, that energy of Mars just tend to it just ripped it all off me anyway, and decided, if you're gonna cling on to it, I'm gonna take it from you. You're
Yeah, yeah.
not meant to hold on to these things.
No,
No, it's
no,
transitory.
it is,
Yeah.
and it's just about constant growth as well. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of at a stage where I'm like, how strong do we need to be? I'm just like, where a little rest period would be lovely at the minute. It's such intense energies at the minute.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, we're in a really interesting um phase of time, I think, and I think a lot of our structures at the minute are going through a death phase. Um, yeah, it's a really interesting time, and I think a lot of things are breaking down around us, and we're questioning our reality and questioning like, is this the best that we can be doing? Yeah, I've definitely gone through that a lot this week, which is quite common with a lunar eclipse as well, and it's all
Yeah.
quite heavy, intense energy at the minute, and then we're entering Scorpio season as well, which
Mm.
is intense. Like speaking as a Scorpio as well, yeah, it's in the very nature of the season. So yeah, interesting times.
Yeah,
Really
we had
interesting
our full
times.
moon in Taurus as well, didn't we?
Mm,
And I witnessed that from Tenerife. So I sat there listening to the entertainment, but with an eye on the moon,
yeah,
thinking, oh, this energy is intense. Yeah.
yeah. Like I just have not been sleeping well lately. I don't know about you, but like everyone around me as well, like really bad sleepless
Yeah.
nights. Like it was broken like last night. I think last night was one of like the first sleeps that I had where I was like, okay, I feel remotely restored. But yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for just trying to take care of yourself a little bit better during this time because it is such intense, volatile energies. It's just, yeah,
Yeah.
protect yourself.
And there's so much going on globally as well,
Mm, yeah.
that we all have to deal with,
Mm,
on a personal level and as a collective
mm.
level. And yeah, it's shadow work as well that we're doing.
Absolutely.
Collective shadow
Absolutely.
work, personal shadow work.
Yeah.
Um, and like you said, it is intense. There is a lot going on. Yeah, and absolutely, you've got to look after yourself, but we've got to look after each other as well.
Exactly.
We move
Yep,
through it.
absolutely. I
Yeah,
think the need for community is going to be really important in the next few years, and looking out for one another and fighting for each other's rights as well. I think yeah, it's intense times ahead, I think. Yeah.
that will come in with Sagittarius as well, because then we've got that humanitarian aspect, haven't we?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
like I've kind of dipped out of the astrology at the minute because like I know so many people who are like this month is really intense, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know. Like I think there's a power to like for me, like I think there's a power to knowing what's coming, like knowing the weather forecast. But I think just at the minute, I just need a little bit of distance from it, and like I think
Yeah.
sometimes astrologically, like ignorance can be bliss sometimes. Um, yeah, yeah. Buckle up, I think, and just yeah, up on the self-care and like yeah, shadow work always a good vibe, especially during this season. And like Scorpio is all about like introspection as well, and like they are like the detectives of the zodiac, and that's kind of like that's really what's the word that I'm looking for? Compounded by the fact that Pluto is one of the rulers or the new ruler because it changed obviously when Pluto was discovered in the 1930s. It used to be Mars,
The
the ruler
underworld.
of Scorpio,
Yeah.
and now it's
Mm.
Pluto, which is this underworld vibe. And like I
Mm.
don't know, like Pluto is also like the detective of the zodiac, in that I don't know. I also kind of see him as like, yeah, he's the lord of the underworld as well. But also, there's this idea of, I don't know. I think of sewers when I think of Pluto, and I think it's the idea that we've built really intricate systems to deal with taboos that we don't have to face with. And I think Pluto drags us down into the underworld, into the sewer to make us face our issues. And I think there's something quite
Absolutely.
profound in that,
Yeah.
that you can't escape your shadows and embrace them, otherwise be thrown into them. Yeah.
Yeah. With a magnifying glass.
Mm,
Yes.
mm,
And
yeah.
it does feel like that in the spiritual community as well. So it's very intense. And you can see that with people's posts as well, you know. Yeah.
Yeah. I think I was going to say it's polarized, but I think every aspect of our society at the minute is polarized, and I see a lot of like peace, love, and light vibes, and I'm like, that's great, but you can't just focus on that. You know, you have to be realistic yourself with yourself. You have to sort of see what's not working with you in within you, and take the invitation to do the work on yourself. And I see a lot of people where it's the it's the focus on light to the detriment of analyzing behaviors that no longer serve or that are quite harmful.
Mm.
Um, yeah, it does. I really love spirituality. I think it's massively empowering, and I think it's what the world is really needing at the minute. But there's a lot of misinformation out there, and that is something that I'm always trying to counter with my podcast. And yeah, I don't know, the whole peace, love, and light vibes. Like, there's definitely a place for it, but you can't just always focus on that. There needs to be that duality. There needs to be that balance. There needs to be that inner work being done, and that constant reassessment and growth. Because it's just, yeah, you're inviting
Absolutely.
stagnation if you focus
Yeah.
on the one thing, you know?
And it's like you said, the
Yeah.
balance with the work, you
Yeah.
know, because it's work. And there's a question in the chat here. Do you have any tips for shadow work for beginners?
Oh, I've actually done an episode on that quite a long time ago. What are my top tips about shadow work? Journaling. And during like the lockdown, I printed off like a pile of questions for myself, because I think it's really easy that because we are ourselves, that we think we know ourselves. And I think it's so good to like revisit the beliefs that we've got. As I think it was Carl Jung who said that belief is the death of rational thinking. I think belief is wonderful to have, but I think it's great to keep it flexible. So re-examine your beliefs, re-examine like what's your favorite color, like what's your favorite meal, like because we're constantly updating, like our software is constantly updating, but we don't necessarily have the realization or like the oh, my views around that have changed. And I think it's really powerful to sort of have that and realize, oh, look how I've grown around this. Um, yeah, it makes me think about like relationships as well, and I think the need of being single for a while after a relationship, to just let the dust settle and to reassess your values and to reassess, okay, well, what do I want going forward? And yeah, kind of went off on a tangent there. Back to shadow work. Yeah, I don't know.
And
Have you
that is
got
shadow. work as
Well,
well, isn't
yeah,
it?
it
After the
is.
relationship
Yeah,
ends,
yeah, yeah,
finding out who
yeah.
you are, the
Rediscovering.
good and the bad,
Yeah.
accepting yourself, what's and all, in order to kind of walk that solitary path for
Mm,
a while.
hmm.
Not a lot of people do that. A lot of people will jump straight back into another relationship because they can't stand that
Yeah.
feeling
To be
of
alone.
vulnerable, of being, and
Yeah.
alone and vulnerable. Is difficult for people. It has been difficult for me in the past, but I'm kind of putting myself through that at the moment. That vulnerability and that intense feeling of who am I? Who
Yeah.
am I on my own?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, rather than kind of having that other
Identity.
person. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, the death of an identity. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. What else can I say about shadow work? It's just a lot of journaling, and it's a lot of, I think there's a really big misconception around shadow work that the more that you do, the more that you need to do. And I'm just like, don't think you can ever do too much shadow work. And I think we're constantly growing, and I don't think you can ever be done with shadow work. And I think as well, there's a lot of things where what's in the shadows is evil. But what we've put into the shadows just might be what our caregivers didn't appreciate. So as children, we're taught, we're basically performers for our parents in that we've got to do things to receive love from them. So, for example, let's say you grow up in a family where the academic world's valued and it's accountants, it's lawyers, it's doctors. You want to portray a tendency towards these professions. But let's say in your heart of hearts you're an artist. That gets pushed to the shadows because we're in survival mode for our parents' love, that we go for the lawyers, we go for the accountants, we go for these sorts of traits that are valued within that family structure. So what's in the shadows might not even be evil. It could be something really beautiful lurking there that is your true calling, you know? So yeah, sense of curiosity, I think, and just yeah, and responsibility for yourself as well. So yeah, I don't know. What have you got any more thoughts on that?
Um, for me, shadow work is is having a focus. So for me, it's a ritual, um, and I like to work with Nephthys. It's actually something that I haven't done for a while, but I
Okay.
plan to have something in place for tomorrow. Okay,
Mm,
so while everybody's out trick or treating, I might let my
dive
daughter
into your
answer the door,
shadows.
with the
Yeah.
sweets and things like that. But I intend to do some shadow work myself, and based around the goddess Nephthys, the Egyptian goddess Nephthys, representing the
Mm,
underworld, the
mm,
shadow side, the dark side. Because I am going through a lot of change at the moment,
yeah,
which
yeah.
is why I'm particularly interested in the death card and
Mm,
Samhain.
mm,
This energy is very important for me at the moment. Um, and the ritual will be to call in that energy, to work with that energy, and to see what comes out.
yeah,
So it's like a meditation.
yeah, and a transmutation as well.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
it'd be like a guided meditation. So I will
Mm,
basically I might have a circle, might do the cleansing ritual, open a circle, and then sit
absolutely.
there and meditate on that energy and what I want for myself, what I want
Yeah,
to get out of this. I want to grow.
the
What do I
next
need to
chapter.
let? What do I want to let go of?
Mm,
What do I want to move through? What energy do I want to welcome in? So a good thing that you can do, just going back to that initial question, tips for shadow work, um, is if you do pull the death card, it doesn't matter which one you use, and then have that death card as your focus. You could have it as a meditation. Okay, looking at specifically the different symbolism. Use what Michael said, the journal aspect as
mm.
well. So
Big
journaling
fan of
what comes
journaling.
out of your meditation. But you could do a little tarot spread as well. So
Absolutely.
what do you need to
Absolutely.
let go of?
Yeah,
Pull one card. Okay. What energy do you need to welcome in?
yeah,
Another card. It could be a very simple 3-card spread around your death card. Do your journaling, do your meditation. If you want, you can have a focus like I will with Nephthys. And it's quite special because you're doing that for a purpose, for a reason.
Yeah,
Um, and you're using the seasonal energy as well, and the energy of Scorpio, the energy of Samhain. You can get quite a lot out of it.
absolutely. And I think even just like, I mean, if anyone's good at drawing, I'm not. Drawing the death card, and just
Mm.
having that as like a moving meditation as you're drawing it, I think that's quite a powerful thing to do as well. Um, and even just printing it off and having it on your altar,
Mm.
doing a ritual around that way. Maybe you burn it, maybe you write things on the back that you want to release, like patterns within yourself that you no longer like or that no longer serve. Write it on the back of the printed card, or if you've illustrated it and burn it, that's a really powerful thing to do. Um, like I think Hecate is quite a powerful deity to work with shadow work, because a lot of traditional offerings to her were the vile, disgusting things. Like it was quite common in ancient Greece for floor sweepings to be offered to her, because she was this mistress of the underworld. She was almost like a bin, a recycling bin in a way. So, yeah, I've done quite a lot of profound rituals where I've bathed, and bathing for me is like massive for like release, especially when I incorporate salt within it. But like bathing within salt and like offering these dark emotions and these dark patterns and things that no longer serve me to her. Um, I don't know, I'd wake up in the morning just like completely transformed, and it's just it is quite profound. Yeah, I don't know, like I think there's a lot of crossover between witchcraft and psychology, and yeah, but I think that's a very simplistic, basic definition of it. But yeah, there's a very interesting intersection between that I think is very interesting to explore, and especially within the realm of shadow work. So yeah, you mentioned divination, and Samhain is was a really like traditionally it was a really good time for divination. You see a lot of these folk things coming up where the divination's themed either around death, um, which obviously fits in nicely within the season because, like, I feel like Samhain across the wheel you've got Beltane, and it's like joy, optimism, this idea of abundance. But then on the other side you've got Samhain, and this is like the stark reality that winter, cold, darkness is here. We might not survive. So I find it really interesting that we've got this idea of death divination as well, and it sounds quite weird, the idea of like divining of when someone in the family is going to die, because often it was a family thing. There's one that jumps out where it's like around the fire, this central fire that was used to ward away the supernatural, they place rocks, and each rock would represent a different family member. And if they'd go to the rocks the next morning, and if one was like misshapen, or if one had moved, or whatever, if there was some differentiation within the rocks, it symbolized that family member would die. And it sounds really weird and alien to us, but you've got to remember that times were really hard back then, and like the life expectancy was like really low. Like I think 30, I think you're around about done throughout some periods of time, and it's just
Yeah.
like I'm 30 now, and I'm just like, Jesus, that's
You're not done yet. You
no,
got time.
touch wood, touch wood. Yeah, hopefully talking about the death card hasn't invoked it literally. Um, so yeah, this divination around death is definitely a theme, but also marriage as well, which is a death in of itself, and a death of an identity. It's the joining of one traditionally, but it's also interesting because it's quite timely in that traditionally it was really common to get married in the winter, because a child conceived in the winter would have been born in the warmer months when the chances of like survival were higher in terms of the temperature and the availability of food. So if anyone's looking for like specific themes around Samhain, I'd say, and divination, I'd say those two things, they're really powerful. And I think there is so much power as well with these festivals, um, in that it's got an energetic imprint, and working with that energetic imprint can be highly powerful and highly influential. And it's almost like, what do I want to say? It's like the path through the forest is well trodden, and you get there quicker. And I don't know, like, does that make sense what I'm saying? It's kind of a rubbish analogy, but like, there's power in doing what's been done before.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
mm,
Yeah,
mm,
it's empowering, isn't
mm.
it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
massively,
yeah, yeah. This is
massively.
a good time of year to do that spiritual work.
Mm,
Yeah, always found that that any kind of rituals done around this time have got increased power and can be very effective.
mm. Well,
Yes.
Scorpio's like the ruler of the occult and the esoteric and the magical as well.
Mm,
It's a very powerful sign for that. So
yes.
yeah, have fun, I think, especially with this idea of the veil thinning and this energy being available. It's a good little witch hack, essentially. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's
like
interesting.
this one as well. So you've
Oh,
got the rose growing out of the skull. So
mm,
we've got death, then we've got rebirth, we've got dark, we've got light, we've got that
yeah,
essential balance.
yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
And just on a side note, like the number 13, massively seen as unlucky, and that's really interesting because like you see certain historical events that sort of compound this, and some that jump to mind is like Philip of Macedonia, like Alexander the Great's father, he put his statue among the 12 Olympian gods, and then shortly after was assassinated. You've got Judas being the 13th guest to the Last Supper. You've got the Knights Templar being executed on Friday the 13th, and then Friday starts. That combination of Friday and 13 starts to become unlucky. But like it was it was seen as a really powerful and transformative number, and it was associated with completing a phase and cycle and something new beginning. So even like the number 13 is a really powerful energy to meditate on. And like the Aztecs themselves believed that 13 was the number of time itself, which is quite a big concept to sit with. So yeah, I don't know. I just saw the number 13 on that card and I was like, oh, let me dive into that. But yeah, and the idea of like the roses growing from death, like that something blossoms after a death and there's space for something to grow as well. That is quite
Yeah.
beautiful and powerful. So,
And the phoenix coming out of the ashes as well.
mm,
The idea of rebirth and being reborn.
mm,
And things
absolutely.
starting again. That cyclic energy. It's very very pure,
Yeah,
and it's a beautiful card. But this tends to be the card that people
fear.
are the most
Yeah, yeah.
scared about. So.
Well, I think that
Mm,
goes to what I was saying earlier, the idea that the West has sanitized death so much that it's become like a really, obviously like a death is traumatic, but I feel like our relationship to it makes it even more traumatic in a way.
yeah.
And like our refusal to process it, our need to push it to the fringes. Yeah. And like
Oh,
sorry,
sorry.
Paul. No, no, go for
Oh,
it.
I was just going to say, but then you've got the Day of the Dead, Dia de los
Mm.
Muertos,
With Santa Muerte
the
as well, like
celebration,
yeah.
yeah, of death, and celebrating the ancestors
Mm.
and
Mm.
leaving presents and gifts for your
Yeah.
ancestors and for friends that have moved on. I mean, I think that above everything, is very
And
respectful. You,
healthy, like
yeah,
so
it's
healthy.
beautiful.
And when you
Yeah.
think of it from a Western perspective, it's like that's so weird, but it's like it really isn't. Like it's so healthy, honoring the
Mm.
life and celebrating it. Yeah, yeah. I've got a lot of views on the West, and I'll take on death, and I'm just like no. It's yeah. It needs a radical revamp, I think. Yeah, we need to update our views on death and death positivity. Yeah.
I'm doing a lot of ancestry work at the moment,
Hmm.
and that fits in
Mm,
really well with this period as well. If you're doing your ancestry work, and I'm getting so into it that I'm imagining these lives, and what they did, and how that affected the
mm,
next generation, and how that
yeah,
affected the next generation. And you've got that cycle going back and back and back and back, and it's so
yeah.
interesting. It means it's not just you as an individual,
There's a
it's
whole team behind you that have like
absolutely,
sleigh bobbed you to this position. Yeah.
yeah.
I was listening to a quote the other day, and it was like, you you owe your ancestors a good life. you owe your ancestors to live the best possible life you can because they've died in wars, they've died in plagues, they've died in famine, they've got up at the crack of dawn to like plow the land. Like you
Yes.
have a duty to them, and it's quite interesting because I feel like the West, again, to harken back to the West, that our ancestors aren't important and they're dead and then that's it. There's no relevance. Um, Whereas I like the idea that you owe them something. They've got you here. The least you can do is just honor them, and have them present. But like again, this is like really problematic because like there's definitely ancestors on my side of the family that were quite difficult, quite challenging, quite nasty people, and it's there's work to be done on an individual level like that if you've got that baggage. And recently I'm just sort of coming to the idea that everyone's trying to do the best they can with what they've got. Like forgive them for what they were. I'm talking about like my grandparents on my father's side. Um, yeah, and I think there's a lot to be said for ancestral healing as well. And like I remember I lit a candle recently and just spoke to them, and yeah, there's a lot to be said, I think, for just accepting that. But again, that's not easy for everybody, and it's such a case by case basis. We don't pick our family, and we can often be born into quite horrific situations.
Yeah.
So yeah, the shadow work needed around ancestor work. Yeah.
Yeah, delving into the shadow work of other people and delving into
Mm,
the shadow work of the family,
yeah.
gosh, I mean, that can be, whew, there can be a lot of stuff that comes out,
Yeah,
and it can be difficult, it can be traumatic,
big time,
um,
big
it
time.
can be, yeah, but ultimately, it can also be healing. So
Oh,
again, you've got that,
massively. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Like there's definitely fruit to be reached from that, but
mm,
it's if you're capable of it and if you want to.
yeah,
Yeah. If you feel able to as well. There's a lot boiling down in that's
yeah.
yeah, messy, really messy.
Well, I'm staying on that shadow work as well. So I don't know if you've seen this deck. It's a very interesting deck. It's called the Tarot of Light and Shadow, and
Mhm.
the text is by John Matthews, and the beautiful graphics is by Andre Aste. And what it does is it's got two packs in it. So you've got the light side and you've got the dark side. So they've both got the same backs.
Mhm.
The backs are beautiful, but
Mm.
then the dark side, the shadow side, has got the darker blue,
Okay.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
then the light side is is a little different.
Yeah, they're mirrors, but they're not quite. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Okay.
this interesting these two decks because you can choose to work with both. So it's almost as if the the upside and then the flip side, the reverse side of the card. But there's more to it than that.
Yeah.
It's like what you can see, what you're aware of here, but what sits behind it, what's hidden,
Mm.
what's mysterious about it. What is that shadow side of it? So you can use these cards as well to I'll use any tarot card, to help with
Yeah,
the shadow work
it's just
aspect.
it's the medicine that you need at the time, and it's what's coming forth from the subconscious that you need to look at. Yeah, you can definitely do a lot of like tarot readings around shadow work.
Yeah,
Um, I think the key to any sort of shadow work is just having the initial awareness of what it is that needs working on. Like, what are your triggers? What upsets you? Who upsets you as well? Um,
figures, yeah.
they're really powerful ones. Oh, this is a big comment. What are they saying? Let's see.
So yeah, I'm just having a look as well. Um, oh, this is Claire. So Claire's one of our TABI family. Hi Claire, and Claire says I appreciate the role of death doulas being with another as they pass. That is incredible to know that people today follow what our ancestors would have done and not to be frightened of passing alone. And that's a really good point, that Claire, because something that terrifies me is that we're talking about all this about cyclic, you know, going on to other different lifetimes and everything. But the actual thought of it, and the one thing that terrifies me the most, is that it's ongoing forever. It
There's
really,
no escape.
it frightens me, and that is my shadow work. Why does that
Mm.
frighten me? Why is the fact that existence forever, you know, which for some people is very appealing. What is that film? Till Death Do Us Part, something with Meryl Streep and
Oh, and they just decay and decay and
yeah,
decay. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Is it, what's it called? Death Becomes Her,
Death
is it?
Becomes Her.
Yeah, yeah,
Gosh, it's from the
yeah,
90s.
yeah.
But yeah, you know, people, the Holy Grail, you know, like eternal life, you know, people search for that. But the actual thought of going on for ever and ever frightens me. It
Yeah.
really does. Yeah, it
I
terrifies
thought
me.
you meant on like a reincarnation basis. What you mean
Uh,
this?
yeah, I think if I was if I was conscious of all of my lifetimes, and going forward, you know, if I was conscious of the fact that we keep going,
Mm,
you know,
let me off.
it's scary. It just is
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah, as you were talking about like being frightened of death, like there's something that I really like to do, and like it's not everybody's cup of tea and it is a little bit weird, but I'm always like a freak for like weirdness. Um if I'm really stressed or worried, I will start to meditate, but I will start to imagine that I'm dead and I'm decaying in a grave. Not everybody's cup of tea, but for me, if I'm stressed about something, it so puts it into perspective for me that I'm just like, one day I will be rotting, like I will be food for something else, you know, and it's just like, is this issue that I'm worried about really that important?
Mm.
It's not everybody's cup of tea, and it is quite gruesome, especially because I'm quite visual and I'm all imagining like my
Mm.
face like decaying essentially and like things running through my eye sockets,
Oh, that's
just to be
interesting.
gruesome. Yeah, for me it's quite profound. And another thing that I was doing was like imagining, because I think there's a lot of power in myths. And I was reading about Inanna. I don't know if you're familiar with Inanna, but one of her big myths is her going through the underworld to visit her sister Ereshkigal, who is the Queen of Death. Um, and she's got to pass through 13 gates, I think. And each gate she takes some of her power off
Mm.
till where she's at the end in front of the Queen of Death, and she's like stripped bare and naked, and all
Mm.
her power's gone. And Ereshkigal is actually able to kill her. Um, I think for me, I was doing this meditation where I was going through these gateways and leaving aspects of myself behind that no longer served. I was doing this through like my Saturn return and over things that I wanted to let go of. Um, I think if you relate to a myth, meditate on it and put yourself in the role of it, I think that's quite a powerful key to play with
Mm.
as well. And just around the theme of death, I think this Inanna's descent into the underworld is quite a powerful myth to play with and to sort of visualize as well. So that could be something for people to play with. Less intense than imagining yourself decaying, but equally as powerful, I think. So yeah.
Yeah, and I see these and like even up to like modern day. I don't know if you even see the Robbie Williams video to Rock DJ. Now I've got a point
Where
on
it's
this, but
terrifying. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, he starts to take off. Well, first it's clothes, isn't it? But then it starts his skin, and then it
Oh, I
gets all the way
remember
down to
that.
the
Yeah.
muscle
Yes.
structure.
No, I remember that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you know the interesting thing is they made that a rated made to make it an 18 video or something like that, so like kids couldn't watch it. Interested that he was trying to put into something, you know, like this is me, you know,
Stripping. Yeah.
underneath it all, you know, the ego, everything, you know, they're just right down to
Mm,
basics.
mm,
And they made that an 18 or whatever it is. They made it higher than
kind of
that. You know, you can't
had
see
to.
that this is obscene.
Yeah,
You know, you shouldn't.
yeah, yeah. upset quite a few people, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because to me, it's like, and again with the symbolism of the death card as well, you've got the skeleton, and it's what remains after death. It is the absolute bare bones, so to speak. Um, and you see the Grim Reaper within the card as well. And like the history of the Grim Reaper is really interesting. The Grim Reaper starts to pop up around the medieval age against a backdrop of like war, plague, famines. And it has a really profound impact on medieval society in that the artwork suddenly shifts and you had these like beautiful, abundant, joyous paintings, and all of a sudden they're depicting utter devastation and death and like complete um bleakness,
Yeah.
and it's from this that this grim grim reaper figure emerges, and it's the personification of death, and I think that's really interesting because in one way it demystifies death, it gives it a face, it gives it a being, but in another way it makes it even more sinister. It's a really double-edged sword. um so yeah, it's just interesting that on the card, like what remains is what's meant to remain, and it's
Yeah.
the stripping back of the unnecessary. Um, yeah, sorry, I'm hearing weird noises in my room. I'm like, oh my God, it really is Halloween. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
and Mo said something very interesting there
Hmm.
as well. She said when she was in her darkest days, she'd imagine an enormous angel, and it would enfold her in its arms. She says the odd thing is, she didn't know that angels are as large as they are. She wasn't into angel readings, but so that was quite,
Hmm.
yeah. And we've got somebody else saying here after death is needed for all the unfinished business we take with us to. I'm sorry, I'm misreading that. Otherwise, this whole massive system of life is broken. Okay, so yeah, people really resonating with this death card energy and this time of year. And
Yeah.
death doulas as well. So Claire, going back to that death doulas, I always well, I did want to have a doula for the birth of my youngest actually. So because doulas also help with the birthing process. I've never actually heard of a death doula, so that's interesting.
It makes me think of have you heard of Sin Eaters?
No.
Sin Eaters, there's not a lot of information based on them, but it's an old English folk tradition whereby someone on their deathbed would confess to these sin eaters their sins, and like certain sins equated to certain food types being eaten. So I don't know, like let's say you murdered a child, there would be a block of cheese at your funeral, and the dishes would be laid out on the person's coffin, and this sin eater would then come. They would hear this person confess, the person would die. They'd come to the coffin, the funeral, and eat the food off the coffin, and it's quite, there's not a lot of information known about it, but there's something quite profound about that. And um, yeah, this psychopomp role in a
Mm,
way of relieving someone of their burdens, so to allow their spirit to travel wherever it needs to.
mm,
Um, yeah, it's really beautiful. Like I'm really interested in death and like the transition. Like a really good thing that I do around this time of year is work with Hermanubis, which is I think the Greeks combined, it was the Greeks, yeah. The Greeks combined Hermes, which is this psychopomp deity figure, and Anubis, which is like lord of
yes.
the Egyptian underworld. So
Mm,
they combined him and made him like this ultimate psychopomp kind of figure. But there's quite a nice little prayer that I've stumbled upon where you invite the dead to feast on bread and water, and then you pass them on. And I think I started doing this after COVID when I was reading that within the spiritual circles that because of the trauma and the way so many people died, that there's a lot of trapped souls on within this realm at the minute, so it's quite a good act of service to help cross them over. So if you're looking for something to do between now and like the 2nd of November, I'd say it was quite a powerful little thing to do. Hermanubis, and what's the other one that I've got? I've got it here, one second. the anima sola, which is like this idea of like souls trapped in purgatory as well. That could be something for people to look into if they're interested, if they want to get involved in like this active service. I think it's just something quite beautiful, and having done it a few times, like the atmosphere afterwards is very calming and soothing. I find it almost like a church situation afterwards because I find churches quite calming.
Me
Um,
too.
so yeah, there's definitely that energy in the room after that for me. So that could be, excuse me, that could be something for people to play with if they were looking for something to do that was themed currently. Yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting you say that as well because I find it a very peaceful spiritual place. So it's not about the religion for me. It's just about having that space and what people use it for.
the
So
energetic
yeah,
imprint. Yeah,
the reason that space is being used, so not necessarily the symbolic side of it for me because
yeah.
that's not really my thing.
Mm.
Uh, However, I like the fact that there is that space that's held for people
Yeah,
to use.
yeah, yeah. That has been programmed throughout hundreds of years for very specific
Mm.
purposes, and yeah, yeah, absolutely. I've got a very tumultuous relationship with Christianity. I have started to work with a few saints because, like, I don't know, like, I was raised a Catholic. I wasn't really, but like, we went to church every now and again. But the idea of saints were just always there. And like, now that I've sort of stepped away and I've got more into witchcraft, I kind of figured like, oh, saints are just like verified magical practitioners that the church was like, oh, it's okay, you can come along. Um, and it's really interesting, and some of them are actually quite witchy. I work a lot with Saint Cyprian, um, and that's just been a really interesting development for me because getting into this, I was never in the mind that Christianity and witchcraft would go hand in hand. But yeah, there's a lot of crossover, and I think Catholicism, and I think a lot of Catholics would be quite upset with me when I say this, but it is very pagan. Um,
It is in origin. Pan, for example, you know how he Poor Pan was made into the devil.
yeah, but even just
But
like the idea of Sunday Mass, like the burning of frankincense and like the symbolic representatives of the body of Jesus, and it's just like, yeah, I don't know, it is quite interesting.
yeah,
But I do find churches massively peaceful
yeah,
places. It does feel like, oh, this is sanctuary. Um, yeah, yeah. It
and
reminds me of a funny story that I've got. I used to model, and I had to go to Paris to do like Fashion Week castings, and um it was freezing. It was the middle of winter, and I mean, it was freezing. It would seep into your bones. And like between castings, I just used to go into a church for the warmth, have a little sleep, find a vent where there was warmth, and just yeah, just pass out for like half an hour, and then skip off to my next casting.
I
Yeah,
love how
it's
exactly how you said very casually. When I used to go to Paris, you know, when I
yeah,
was a
yeah. So,
model, and I used to go to
so yeah,
and
it's
I used to go
cringe.
and sleep in churches, right?
Yeah, no, that's my
That's
relationship to churches. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, how to hack a church. Yeah, there's something quite, yeah, beautiful about them. But it's like I was saying though, there's power in what's gone before, and I think that's why I've sort of developed my relationship with Christianity because whether I like it or not, my ancestors prayed and had a relationship with Christianity, and I think there's power in utilizing that, but hacking it in a way that's a useful tool. And I think obviously there's a difference between obviously the horrific things that the church has done and continues to do, and then obviously like your ancestors using it on like a folk on a yeah a folklore folk level. Um, yeah, there's two very
Mm,
they're the same stream, but they branch drastically.
mm.
And I think that's been a part of my journey as well, just understanding that and understanding that they're two very different entities, and you still can work with one quite
Yeah,
effectively. So,
and
yeah.
I love the death card aspect of stripping it all back to basics because all of the different religions, you know, there is like a fundamental truth to it all.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
absolutely.
as problematic as
Mm.
religions are, I think the sense of community that they bring and fundamentally the tenets within them, they can be quite powerful.
Yeah.
But again, pinch of salt because you start to get all sorts of weird things when you start to look into that and like, yeah, it's yeah, maybe a pinch of salt with what I've said, but yeah, oh, I love that.
Now
What
this.
deck's that?
So this is the Light Seer's Death card.
Okay.
And I love this one because you have got the hood or you've got the
Mm,
headdress. Okay, and then what you see within it, okay, you can see the sky, you can see that limitless energy, you know.
mm,
And the
mm,
fact that we're layers, you know, it's a mask. What I'm wearing is a mask to what's going on inside, to the
mm,
experiences, to the processing, to the spiritual journey, because that's essentially what it is.
mm.
We're not just oh, did somebody say it was really awful the other day? A meat suit or
Meat
something
suit,
like
yeah, yeah, I've heard that
horrible.
before,
But,
yeah.
but you know what I
It's quite
mean?
vile.
There's,
Yeah, yeah.
there's more to it than that. And once you get
Absolutely.
that, you grasp it. You know, you've got the basics of this death card energy. It's not final. It's in motion. It's fluid. It's
Yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. I
Yeah.
just in relation to that, a powerful phrase that I came
Mm.
across recently is that we're like collaborators and colluders in life, and really anything is possible. And I'm really, I'm a really rational person, so this is quite hard for me to grapple with, but it is something that I'm playing with, and it's interesting how things are unfolding. At the start of the year, I was very optimistic, and I've kind of lost that a bit, just based on current events. But I'm starting to get back into that energy again, and it's just like anything is possible. Um, and just trying to open your mind up to that, which is so hard for me because I'm so like
Mm.
ABC. Um, yeah, it's just something that I've been playing with. When I looked at that card, I'm like, there's that universe within that hood. It's like, yeah, anything is possible. Especially with this idea of like once you undergo a death,
Yeah.
there's this renewal. It's yeah, it's powerful stuff. It
Mm.
really is. Meditating on the death card alone, I think, is just a powerful exercise.
That's something that everyone
Yeah.
can do as well. So people asking about shadow work that you could do or specific rituals for this time of year. You can meditate on the death card, like Michael says, and you can journal with it. What comes out of it, that meditation?
Mm,
Where did you go? What did you get from it?
mm. I love this comment where someone's met an old man who digs graves and it has said that the smell and shape of the grave can determine whether the person was good or bad or not. And I'm just like, that to me is just like,
Interesting.
you don't have to be an astrologer or into tarot to be able to pick up on messages. I think the gods, energy, life, whatever you want to call it, is in constant communication with us and constantly giving us signs to read into. It's just having the awareness and the skill set and the understanding to interpret the signs and to draw meaning from them. But I think the universe or the spirits or whatever you want to say, it is in constant communication with us. Um, and again, I think the tarot is so powerful because it's been around for quite a while. I think what was it, 1400s, the tarot, they think, no, I mean, nobody truly knows the origins, but I think it pops up around the 1400s from like um, an Arabic game that was brought into Sicily, when it underwent invasion and then it got put into Venice. So it's had a
The
long,
Marseille. You
yes,
got the
and then
Marseille
it got
there.
into like with the French occultists.
Got it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's been around for a
Mm.
long time, and on an energetic imprint level, yeah, there's power to that. So
Mm.
yeah,
And
but
then we
there's
have the Golden Dawn, and we've got the astrology that comes in with
yeah,
that. So interesting, like to the really, well, it's not so much modern day anymore, but Rider Waite, it's got a bit of
mm,
everything in it.
it
Got
does.
the
It's yeah.
Rosicrucian cross there. Yeah.
And I was reading that that relates
Mm.
to Jesus as well and the five wounds of his suffering,
Mm.
and his transmutation as well. It also makes me think of alchemists really viewed the sign of Scorpio as a really powerful time where iron was it iron? The base material was able to be turned into gold. Like on an alchemical level, it was a really powerful um, turning base metal into gold vibe, and I think that's just quite beautiful with the analogy of death as well. This idea of something becoming quite valuable and precious after the process. It's
Like
yeah.
that alchemical process.
Mm,
It's really,
mm,
really, really beautiful.
absolutely.
Yeah, and again that
Absolutely.
balance, dark and light, and going back to the graves as well. Good and bad, but I think there's good and bad in everybody. There's good and bad in every card, and that's something that I tell people when I'm reading for people. They're not bad cards, they're not good cards. There's good
Yeah.
and bad and balance in everything
Yeah, yeah.
that
I
is around
mean,
us.
it just
Yeah.
it makes me think of medicine, and medicine on
Mm,
the right dose can heal, and medicine on the right dose can kill.
yeah.
It's all about that balance and determining
Mm,
the right dose for the right cause.
yeah.
It's yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Well, just have a quick look through the chat. I just realised that it's 10 past 8.
Oh wow, we've overrun.
Yeah,
Like that went so
no, but that's
quickly.
all. It's because
Wow.
it's good to chat, isn't it?
Yeah,
Because
no.
yeah, it's a very
Like-minded
interesting.
people, it's always good to have.
Yeah.
Trying to think if there's anything else that I want to say. Oh, just the symbol of scorpions.
Yes.
Scorpions, I'll wrap this up really quickly. Scorpions have got a really interesting history. They were the first land dwellers. They're older than dinosaurs and spiders, and they obviously live in really inhospitable environments. And I think that says a lot for something about like
Mm,
death and the power of it. And I
yeah.
didn't know this, but scorpions actually, what's the word, shed their exoskeleton like 5 to 7 times
Yeah.
within their life. And I'm just like, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Which again, like totally death vibes with this
Like the
idea of like
fact of
constant
return.
growth. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting.
And it's got
So
a powerful sting as well. You don't mess with the Scorpio, do you?
no, you do
We can say
not.
never forget. People
I
think
can
that Taurus
testify.
doesn't forget, but Scorpio never forgets.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Hell hath no fury.
Like a
Yeah.
Scorpio. Gosh.
Yeah.
So, Neil Killsouls, come on. Hello, Neil. He says, such fascinating topics. Harvest time of year seems a perfect time to take stock of accomplishments and wins,
Mm,
losses. Yes, it is
mm,
the harvest season as well.
mm.
And actually, you reminded me, I need to bring all my furniture in from the garden now on a really
Yeah.
practical, mundane level.
Yeah, 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 yeah. The mundane's also always so grounding. Yeah, yeah.
And okay, we have some other wonderful conversation. Thank you so very much. You are
Thank
very
you.
welcome,
I'm
Mo. And
thrilled
it
that
was
we've
lovely
been
to
able to provide
yeah,
it.
it was lovely to have Michael on to join us
Yeah,
with our TABI
thank you
live
so much for
today.
having me. Thank you.
Oh no,
It's been lovely.
it's great. Thank you so much for coming on. And Claire said, very deep discussion and very much appreciating listening to us both as well. I was thank you everybody for joining us and
Mm,
thank you for your comments. And Michael, before you go,
mm.
just tell me, I'll tell everybody, where
Yes.
people can find you, what projects you've got coming up, or what lives you've got coming up, any other videos you're putting together.
What have I got coming up? I mean, the podcast. I run a podcast in case anyone's like joined late and didn't know, on like spirituality and witchcraft, like a one-on-one guide, and I literally talk about all sorts. It's a really weird mix of all sorts. Um, yeah, I mean, the podcast is on break at the minute because like life just feels too hectic to run a podcast on top of it all. So I'm coming back, I've said, in the spring of 24, which feels quite strange to say and feels really far away. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm on like all the socials as the Mage as well, and that's Mages. Um, yeah, what else do I want to say about my podcast, really? Yeah, if you like weird stuff, come along.
Weird with a Y,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
great
absolutely.
word.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh no, I don't see weird as an insult. I fully
Yeah,
embrace the weird. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, if
yeah.
you're not weird, I don't think I want to know you, you know? Yeah, always a good one for weird. Yeah.
I was one of the weird kids,
I
and
was, not
I
really
kind of
was.
grew into that word, and I really like it now. But when you're a kid, it's got a bad connotation. But as you
Yeah.
get older, you realise that it's
Oh
actually got a
yeah.
uniqueness to
Yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah. The
But
weird
yeah,
kids are the fun ones now. I always find them at the parties. So yeah, absolutely.
we become the tarot readers as well, don't we?
Yeah, 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 yeah. The weird kids just become like the weird
The
spiritual
witches.
witches. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. Messing with bones and sticks in
Yeah,
the corner, like, oh,
yeah,
let's leave
yeah.
them alone. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
With the ones
Absolutely.
with the strange hats.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Totally, totally. Wow.
So, yeah, everybody, thank you. Thank you. Thanks. It was a really interesting talk. Thank you both, very thought-provoking. Looking forward to Return of the Mage as well. And another thank you both. So thank you, everybody. I am going to put this video up afterwards so you can catch the recording again, and I will tag Michael as well, so you can please follow him, like him. He's also on TikTok as well, and I believe you've got a YouTube channel. You are basically
Yeah,
everywhere as a mage as
I've got a
well.
few. I need to put
Yes.
more work into my YouTube channel, but yeah, there's like guided meditations on there as well. There's guided meditations on my podcast. Like, yeah, I'm available on like all the platforms, like wherever you listen to podcasts. So yeah, if you've liked what I've said, please check me out. And hopefully there's some useful stuff for you all. So yeah, fingers crossed. Thank you for listening to my mad rambling tonight. Yeah.
Thank you very much, and have a great Samhain, everybody. Happy to
Yeah.
celebrate, and Halloween for some people as well. And we're also
Yes.
feeling the effects of the full moon as
Be
well. So
gentle.
everybody take care of yourself. Be
Yes. Be
gentle. Yeah.
gentle and enjoy crossing the dead over. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Take care
All right.
and thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. Ciao, ciao, guys. Good night.